So, in this CPE panel, we have quite a lot of representatives from various horizons in the industry. So I will try to ask each of them to briefly, very briefly introduce themselves, maybe like 30 seconds to introduce yourself with a slide that you have created. So, first one, Ole.
Okay, so my name is Ole Troan. I work for Cisco. Right here, I guess I have my IETF and my BBF hat on. Been doing V6 standardization, deployment, and development for a long time. I guess my main role here is as one of the people pushing for more complexity into the CPEs and more transition and IPv4 exhaustion mechanisms.
Thank you. Next, Chiara.
I'm Chiara Moriondo. I'm part of the R&D group in Telecom Italia, and as a group we help to deploy standards and do beta testing to define if the functionalities are working as we need for our network, and we try to disseminate IPv6 knowledge inside our company. That is not always so easy. Anyway, the major interest is to be able to define a service model that can be really deployed in the network. And also in this case, it's not an easy task.
Thank you. Next, Jan.
Hello, my name is Jan Zorz. I come from Slovenia. I've been talking yesterday. Probably my role here is the opposite of Ole's, to push us less complexity in the CPE and to finally decide which one of 200,000 transition mechanisms we want actually in the CPE and IPv6 generically in the CPE. Thank you.
Next, Misha.
Misha Peters. I work for A10 Networks. We don't do anything with the CPE. We do have a lot of transition technologies on our platform. I'm the team lead for systems engineering in EMEA, partly responsible for the European roadmap. And talking to some people here, it's very different from the US. So it's good that we do have a focus on Europe specifically as well. I'm actively involved with a lot of implementations and proof of concepts for the things that we see the most currently. That's carrier grade NAT, unfortunately, DS Lite, and NAT64, DNS64.
Thank you. Next, Wouter.
My name is Wouter Cloetens. I work for SOFTATHOME. We license software stacks to equipment manufacturers and network operators. So we don't do any of our own hardware production, which effectively allows the network operators to take some control away from the equipment manufacturers and deploy their own technologies using our firmware. This should help with IPv6 transition mechanisms. Now, the point I'd like to make is that you can find excuses not to deploy IPv6, and the CPE has long been the black sheep I've been pointing at. I've got another excuse that I've put on my slide, but if you're going to find excuses, you're never going to deploy. So you should deploy anyway, but you should have some sort of a strategy to upgrade in the future to be flexible, and we can help with that.
Thank you. Next, Claire.
Hello, I'm Claire from Dealing Wireless and Router Division. I'm a senior product planner, now lead IPv6 CPE specifications, IPv6 strategies with our program planner, Hans Liu. And us Dealing started our IPv6 development rather early back in 2003. So we've been actively taking part in global IPv6 events and tests. And we also participate UNH ILL tests events for twice last year, and we both passed test programs. And we have the most complete IPv6 WAN type support, and also support super security in some of our high-end SKU wireless routers. And we're also interested in the next generation home networking as well.
Thank you. Michael.
So I am Michael from JUNIPER Networks, System Engineering Group. I've been involved in quite a few CGNAT and DS Lite deployments since a couple of years. And I try to look at the problem as a whole, including all the different broadband elements, and to find some pragmatic solution to different service provider scenarios. And I think as any of the guys here, I am trying to get IPv6 deployed as soon as possible, but still having IPv4 contained as much as we can.
Thank you. Carl?
Okay, I'm Karel Wouts from TECHNICOLOR Belgium. I will skip the first line because it just shows I'm getting old, but I'm trying to actively introduce IPv6 in Ethernet and DSL CPEs. I'm also a bit against my neighbor here, Ole, trying to make things more complex. So my main quest for the last couple of months is fight against them at V6 Ops. Well, fight in the, not in the physical way. Not yet. Now it's getting dangerous now. But the idea is if we can't keep it simple, if we can't draw the line, then some of you can reuse your slides and put the CPEs not ready for the next 5 years.
Thank you. John?
Yeah. John Brzozowski from COMCAST. I lead the deployment efforts at COMCAST. We're a US-based cable service provider. We're moving past the point of having infrastructure readiness. We've announced quite a bit of activity, and hopefully folks here in Europe are aware of some of this work. The areas where we're looking to move now are making sure that we have CPEs that meet our requirements, so that we can further extend V6 into our subscribers' homes. This includes working with organizations like the Consumer Electronics Association, as well as retailers and our own CPE development vendors as well.
Thank you. So, as we have seen, oh, Martin, sorry. Where's your slide? I don't have it here.
Where's my slide?
I don't know.
Maybe I don't. I've already spoken today, but there's a reason why I'm here. The more CPE that becomes V6 enabled, the more V6 traffic people like us see. And that's the simple message, is that as this becomes, it doesn't replace the total amount of traffic, but that was what my slide said. Please send me more V6 traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Actually, it's a good segue to my introduction slide, which essentially is to say that if you have V6 content, because we have World IPv6 Day last year, World IPv6 launch this year, if you have IPv6 ISPs, thanks to John and a bunch of others who are really doing an effort to get IPv6 to the home, even if you have IPv6 operating system and application, if this CPE remains IPv4, the internet remains IPv4. So that's not the ideal solution that we all have in mind. So if we want to change that, we need to do something about the CPE. So I have prepared a number of questions for our panelists who come from, said, different horizon service providers, equipment vendors, CPE code developers, ISPs, and so I'm going to browse quickly through the questions, and then we'll go through each and every one of them and start the discussion. So the first one is, what defines an IPv6 ready CPE? Question number one is, this is not just about IPv6, there's this transition phase that happened, there's maintaining IPv4, so out of the gazillions of transition mechanisms that we have defined in IETF, and I was the chair of NG Trans, I'm the chair of Softwires. We have 46 drafts in our working group. We have way too many of them, so blame me. Yes. Yes. And we're inventing more every day. So do we need some kind of profiles for this, like a 2011, 2012, 2013 profile? So second question will be more about interoperability. What do we need to do about interoperability? Do we need to have some kind of bake-off and things? Number three is, as I said, we keep inventing new transition mechanism and we keep inventing new technology to go into CPE. So if we have a problem this day, how can we make sure that we will not have a problem 2 years from now or 5 years from now? So then going to market trend, and where is the market going? Like we have this lease model, like boxes, which we see a lot in Europe. We have a retail model, but we see a lot in America. Where is this thing going to? And we already have heard some of the topics in the introduction. Do we want more complexity or do we want less complexity? Where is all this thing going? And, but really importantly, the last two questions is, can we buy an IPv6 CPE today? And if so, who is going to pay for it? Okay? So I think the last two questions are really the most important ones, but I think we need to spend a little bit of time to set the stage about technically what is an IPv6 CPE. So I'm going to start with that. What is an IPv6 CPE. Who would like to address this question first?
I think that's a question for Ole. He's defining it.
Ole.
Well, so an IPv6 ready CPE is actually quite well defined. I mean, for service provider managed CPEs, it's defined in Broadband Forum in TR 124. It's defined for the cable space in the e-reader spec. And all of us have come together in the IETF and specified it in an RFC called 6204. That's the basic IPv6 CPE. That has certification testing that UNH does, and they give a logo on your CPE if it's an IPv6 ready CPE or not. If the CPE has that logo, it is an IPv6 ready CPE.
Now, let me ask a question to our software developer here. You have heard that we have some specs coming from Broadband Forum or IETF. Do those specs actually help you to decide what to put in your code?
Absolutely. It certainly helps. We have a lot of complexity on IPv4 today, and different mechanisms, incompatible mechanisms, custom mechanisms. At least something like the Broadband Forum and RFC 6204 help us clearly to define that this is how we need to behave. Now we understand what we need to do. They don't go far enough. You do need to support the transition mechanisms. Transition mechanisms aren't necessarily all ready. The interoperability testing doesn't necessarily always happen. So it's a very much of an evolving scene still, and we need to just, I think, accept that it's an evolving scene.
So let me really dig into this one. So it seems that we understand what an IPv6 CPE is from 6204 and the Broadband Forum document. So that's really come to my second question here, and then I would like to open it to the floor of our panelists. What about those transition mechanisms? It seems to be the place where there is a lot of disagreement. We have like many of them. So who would like to address this? John.
So Alain, I mean, I think this question is it does vary by operator or by adopter of the technology. I mean, I know that there are many things that we minimally require that it makes our list much shorter than some of the items that we see here. So I think it varies from adopter to adopter in many cases. It depends on the conditions that each of those operators or deployers have to face as part of their rollout of V6. For us, from a native V6 point of view, our requirements were very straightforward. Prefix delegation, and unfortunately, Ole and others and I had, some series of duking it out sessions. But so I think with the biz version of 6204, this for us represents a more complete picture of what a V6 compliant CPE will be or should be.
So let me ask a question, and then I will bring to Ole. You said that different providers may have different requirements. Mm-hmm. So if me as a customer just go to the electronics store and want to buy my CPE, do I need to get COMCAST branded CPE or Orange branded CPE or an AT&T branded CPE?
From our point of view, I think we'd all agree that's not ideal. You should be able to pick a CPE that meets a minimum level of requirements, and then in some cases, if operators have additional ones, like so Comcast has their own branded CPE, but we also know that a lot of our subscribers go to the Best Buys, the Walmarts of the world to purchase their own. And this goes back to Ule's point about the CPE logo and the testing. The expectation is that there's a minimal amount of support. If operators require additional functionality, then they can work with their vendor partners for their own branded specific CPE.
And actually, I'll confirm. I'll confirm that point. Trying to be generic about this. I'm based in the US. I have internet service from a certain cable company that's here on the panel. I went to, again, generic, a very large electronics superstore on the way home from work, and I picked up a piece of CPE from somebody else on this panel sitting next there. Thank you very much. And I just I actually went to the top of the line, but I sent a message to John saying, which one should I buy? He responds with a number. I picked it up, I paid for it, I went home. Go back to question one. Go back a slide. What is an IPv6 ready CPE? Well, in my household, I know I have an IPv6, not only ready, but operational piece of CPE. But no one else in the household knows that.